FDA scientist David Graham testified that he estimates Vioxx caused more than 100,000 heart attacks, 30 to 40% of them fatal. But Graham told members of the Senate Finance Committee that his FDA superiors ridiculed him and insisted on changes.
I was pressured to change my conclusions and recommendations. One drug safety manager recommended that I should be barred from presenting the poster at the meeting and also noted that Merck needed to know our study results.
Graham offered a blistering condemnation of the FDA's drug safety program, saying that the system is broken and often overlooks the dangers of drug side effects.
The FDA, as currently configured, is incapable of protecting America against another Vioxx.
These legal documents spell out what Merck knew and when they knew it. In clinical trials during the late 90s, the company tested whether their anti-inflammatory drug Vioxx could prevent cognitive decline in patients with Alzheimer's disease. Life-threatening risks were documented but were never reported to the FDA or the public.
The company found a threefold increased risk in mortality and failed to see a safety signal. By scientific standards, this is a major safety issue.
Dr. Bruce Pasady and colleagues at the University of Washington reviewed numerous legal documents from litigation involving Merck and Vioxx. In a published report in 2004, Merck reported that Vioxx is, quote, generally well tolerated by the elderly patients in our study. But this internal company document tells a different story. It reveals Merck knew about an increased risk in mortality associated with Vioxx, and they knew this in 2001.
If these findings had been made public back in 2001, many fewer people would have taken Vioxx, and because it is associated with an increased risk of mortality and of heart attacks, many fewer people would have been harmed.
Of all the things that you trust every day, you want to believe that your prescription medicine is safe and effective. The pharmaceutical industry says that it follows the highest standards for quality, but in November, we found out just how much could go wrong at one of the world's largest drug makers. A subsidiary of GlaxoSmithKline pleaded guilty to distributing adulterated drugs. There was reason to believe some of the medications were contaminated with bacteria, others were mislabeled, and some were too strong or not strong enough. It's likely that Glaxo would have gotten away with it had it not been for a company insider. A tip from Cheryl Eckert set off a major federal investigation. She's never told the public what she saw inside Glaxo, but tonight she will. Her story opens a rare window on how one company traded its good name for bad medicine.
Eckert says she discovered something much worse than contamination. Because of failures on various production lines, she says that powerful medications were getting mixed up.
Are you saying that different kinds of drugs were packed into the same bottle?
Yes.
Eckert says this chart that she produced for company executives shows the kinds of mix-ups that were happening at Cedra. She identified 9, including Avandia diabetes pills mixed in packages with over-the-counter Tagamet antacids, and Paxil antidepressants mixed with the Avandia diabetes drug.
When you saw these mix-ups happening, what did you do?
I contacted the Vice President of Quality for North America, and I told him that he needed to shut down the factory and call the FDA.
Shut the whole thing down?
Right. I urged him to stop the trucks that were leaving the dock that day.
What happened then?
I went back to work.
Did they shut down the plant then?
No, they filed a report with the FDA that said that, that the mix-up was not real and did not happen at the factory. We all knew. They all knew.
After 8 months of reporting problems at Cedra, Eckert sent this summary to 7 executives detailing 9 high-risk areas at the plant, including the mix-ups, the water contamination, and the problems with sterility. Weeks later, she was out of a job. Glaxo said it was downsizing.
How is this fraud against the U.S. government?
pharmaceutical drugs are paid for by our Medicare program for the elderly, by our Medicaid program for the impoverished. And here we have a situation where hundreds of millions of dollars were paid for adulterated drugs through our Medicaid programs.
Glaxo pleaded guilty to a felony. It admitted it distributed adulterated drugs, Paxil CR, Avandamint, a diabetes drug, Kytril, a drug given to cancer patients, and Bactroban. Altogether, the company paid $750 million to settle the criminal conviction and Cheryl Eckert's suit.
In the 1980s, Bayer Corporation produced a medicine that was supposed to improve the lives of hemophiliacs. Bayer didn't tell those hemophiliacs that their product was infected with HIV.
Okay, let's talk about the rat of the week. Why is Bayer Corporation the rat of the week?
Internal documents show that after this company positively, absolutely knew that they had a medication that was infected with the AIDS virus, they took the product off the market in the U.S. and then they dumped it in France, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. The medicine's called Factor VIII. It was an injection medicine that was used for hemophiliacs, mostly children. Children had been born with an incurable disease.
Hold on, Mike. So, hold on. So you're telling me that Bayer knew that this drug was infected with the AIDS virus. They yanked it from the market in America, and then they dumped it in markets overseas?
They had to figure out a way, Joe, to make a profit on a product that they could not sell in America. So they made a huge profit. They dropped the product in Japan, Spain, and France. By the way, Joe, government officials in France that allowed that to happen actually had to go to prison for it. In America, not one corporate executive for this company has been indicted or even criminally investigated by our Justice Department.
Why not? You're telling me that these people that dumped this AIDS-tainted blood in foreign countries, who killed children, have not been taken to task in the United States?
It's worse than that. The U.S. government allowed it to happen. The FDA allowed this to happen. And now the government is completely looking the other way. Thousands of innocent hemophiliacs have died from the AIDS virus. And not only they're dying, their family members are dying because they're becoming infected with the disease. This company knew absolutely that they had a problem with the product. They knew that it was infected with AIDS. They dumped it because they wanted to turn this disaster into a profit. Because of that, entire families of hemophiliacs died with AIDS as the virus spread within households. When Bayer was ordered to stop selling their drug in America, they dumped their AIDS-laden product in Asia and killed Asian families. No one with Bayer management was arrested. They argue that the U.S. Supreme Court mandated 130 years ago that we must treat corporations exactly like we treat people. The U.S. Supreme Court expanded the definition of person even further for American corporations. The big winner were the corporations that are the most corrupt. This is a Supreme Court that is packed mostly with lawyers who were employed by America's most powerful corporations before they became judges. It's a court full of judges who sit on the court largely because the corporate powerhouses they once represented helped put them there.